So I went to my first MLA meeting in 1977, and at that time OCLC was really in its infancy. The University of Texas was inputting records into OCLC, but not music records yet because the MARC format had not yet been fully developed. It was being worked on by a task force. And on this task force was Olga Booth, who was at Ohio University then, and that same year left Ohio and came to the University of Texas. And so she was one of my resource people. So anyway, in 1977, a group of people led by Lenore Coral from, I believe she was at Cornell, and she led the meeting, got together a group of people, catalogers, and asked if we would be interested in forming a chapter of music catalogers who could talk to OCLC and give them our concerns, what we needed. Hi, I'm Judy Guido. I retired from the University of Texas 15 years ago. I began work at the University of Texas in 1976. When I came to Texas, I was working at Northwestern for a couple of years where I learned how to catalog.
I actually joined MOUG in 1990, and I started as a student when I was at the Indiana University, and I was doing my teaching was with Ralph Papakian and Sue Stanchu, and they said, you really have to join MOUG, it's a great organization, and there'll be a lot of opportunities for training and things. So I joined then.
I should say that you should never ever skip a joint presentation by Tracy Snyder and Kevin Kishimoto, because you will learn a lot of things, and they're thoughtful, but they're also really entertaining too. So Bruce Evans was serving as the continuing education coordinator at the time when I started in MOUG. And Bruce, if you look at the MOUG history, is the only person who's ever served in that position for 2 terms in a row. And so, yeah, but he did a great job in that position. So I sort of had this perception of him as the perpetual continuing education coordinator.
So this was a really difficult question to answer because there are just so many different ones to choose from. So, well, of course, I would love to fill a whole journal with all of my memories from MOUG, fond memories from MOUG. There's no time for that. So, and then at the very end of my time as chair, and just before becoming past chair, I had the privilege and distinct honor of presenting the Distinguished Service Award to Neil Hughes.
My current position, as it was described recently on a name tag at a Untitled Chapter meeting, is blissfully retired. Prior to that, I retired from this self-same institution, the University of Georgia Libraries, after 30 years working here. During MOUG board meetings in Columbus, Ohio, we were often graciously served a delicious lunch at the home of Jay Whites and his wife Esther Silverman. And to see Jay interacting with his dogs made all the work at those meetings worthwhile. You haven't really seen joy light up another space until you've seen Jay with the dogs. So I had to use my emergency backup, which consisted of transparencies on an overhead projector. And that was a bit of a fiasco because I kept inserting them upside down. Some helpful person in the audience, I believe it was my good friend Sue Weiland, kept yelling, "Again, Neil," whenever I would get one upside down.
And now it was time to figure out how to display all this cool information we'd coded in a way that was intelligible to the average user, or at least to music librarians on the public side. And so there was a session where sort of everybody just got together and had a discussion about how to do this, a very freewheeling discussion about how to approach this. And it was nearly everybody participated. We're talking probably 80 people. And it was like a human pinball machine. People were pinging and ricocheting ideas off each other and arguing points and coming to a consensus. And I remember thinking, this is what makes MOUG work.
The camaraderie of the members of the Music OCLC's users group was something that was really special, and there weren't politics. It was just all about helping one another.
And I would echo what Joan just said about the camaraderie, that some of the people that I got to know, colleagues in MOUG, are still some of my closest friends in the profession. And
I was telling you over lunch, my first time I met Jay Whites,
And Jay Whites was a young upstart at OCLC at that time. And
I had read his book when I was learning to catalog and then cataloging professionally.
Yep.
Read his book, referred to it constantly, reading his column and so forth. And then I met him in person, and I had to stop myself from dropping to my knees in deference.
it's true.
So my path was, so I came in, I was doing some of the reference committee work and was whatever coordinator it was at the time. And that got passed off eventually to other people. But Neil Hughes had pulled me into the program committees a couple times. One of them was for one of the big anniversary meetings, 20th anniversary Boston,
Yeah.
it may have been, and then the Las Vegas meeting as well. And that was very rewarding and exciting to participate in. And I was so excited at the time that people wanted to hear from the new people.
Right.
And I remember that was one of the things about MOUG, is not only are these only people to talk to help teach me and to commiserate with, or I would make a list of problems and bring them with me to the meeting. How are you handling this? That you could talk to anybody in MOUG.
Right.
You could talk to the important people.
Yes, you could.
And that was really nice, but that they wanted our input on these meetings. And that was exciting to be able to affect change from the very beginning. And I've always considered MOUG to be an incubator of leadership.
Oh, that's a good way to describe it.
So, or it's a place where people can participate, where it makes sense for them professionally.
My other MOUG activities then, after being, I stepped down for a little bit after being the public services person, and then I followed Jean Harden as the chair of MOUG. And when I agreed to serve, I was telling my husband that I was going to stand for election, and he kept saying, "Do they know that you don't know how to catalog?" It's like, shh.
Well, I already told you actually my favorite memory, and that was the one when I went back to the joint MOUG OLAC meeting, or OLAC MOUG meeting actually.
Oh, right.
And for the second time, and I came back as a leader.
Yes.
And to stand in front of people was just really powerful. And I joked about how my first meeting, they had served tiramisu at the luncheon. It was my first tiramisu experience. And I told them about that, and then I had to clarify the dessert.
Right.
As opposed to other.
Right.
Yeah, so that was good. And I ran into people I'd met in my very first meeting. And so it was just a nice circle for me. But, and I told you that Mickey's award, again, coming full circle, was really nice.
One is being at a meeting where Jay White stood up to talk. And as he stood at the podium, he assured us all that he was, in fact, standing up.
And Jay Whites was a young upstart.
I remember. And the second memory I have is being at OCLC.
One of my favorite memories is the camaraderie when we met at Jay's house. And I don't know if Dan will mention this, but we both said how we really enjoyed meeting his dogs. And it was just a great group, and I really enjoyed it, and I do miss it.
And I would like to thank MOUG for inviting me to speak. I consider this an incredible honor to be invited to interview to help celebrate MOUG's 40th anniversary and the organization I dearly love. So thank you.
Well, if any of this is shown at the MOUG meeting, I naturally have final words. I'm sorry I couldn't be there with you to celebrate this year. And my parting shot has to be this: while it would be great if everyone could give $40 towards the 40 for 40 campaign, I know not everyone can do that. However, each and every one of you might be able to recruit another colleague to MOUG's ranks. So please make trying to do so a priority as you move on to the MLA meeting following this, and as you return to work following your week in Portland. Thanks very much, and I'll hope to see you all again in not too many more years. And thank you, Keith.
Thank you, Neil.
Bye. Well, I just like to say that,
it's just kind of amazing that MOUG's been around for 40 years, so it's just pretty amazing. And I don't know if you all ever thought that that would have been the case when, in the very early days of MOUG, that there would still be a need for a user group for MOUG 40 years later, or that the group would be such a, long-standing.
Yeah, I think I didn't even think about 40.
You don't think about 40
years
years
forward.
On with new advancements and adapting to whatever comes along. And Jay White's, I have to give some credit to Jay White's. Jay White's was, and it still is, our rock and anchor for OCLC